Hello there, and happy Wednesday. Today is June 12th, and I thought I'd jump on here just to talk a little bit about mediumship and what does it take to become a medium? Is it something intrinsic? Can you learn to do it? And all of this conversation is really part of the class that I'm going to be teaching. It starts on August 1st. It is, let me put it up here, JennaMatlin.com Spectral Reader. This is a tarot course of mediumship by a tarot reader for a tarot reader. And the reason why I put that up was I felt a lot of tarot readers who may have natural talent being a medium um, may not feel like they do, or they've been convinced that because they use tarot cards that they can't be mediums, or they're somehow a lesser of a medium. And so a lot of tarot readers who actually do have a lot of innate talent don't actually know that they do, or feel like they have to put tarot away in order to do so. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of that and really unpack often like unexamined belief sets around these abilities, because I think that people that could be very, very talented in these areas are absolutely just talking themselves out of doing something that is incredible and amazing to do. One of the things that I've just noticed is how a lot of mediums, the no tools mediums, will say things like, well, I'm a no tools psychic and you shouldn't use tarot for mediumship. Or if you use tarot for mediumship, then maybe you're not really as good, or maybe you aren't really a medium. And a lot of those people, they have unexamined beliefs. Like, where does this idea come from? Part of it is historical, like um, spiritualism, which was really big in the 1800s to early 1900s in the US, the UK, and Canada, was really responsible for the type of mediumship that most people practice today. However, that is a very different school of evolution, shall we say, of where tarot or cartomancy wasn't a part. Not much unlike, why is dentistry its own thing versus all the rest of your body, right? It's kind of put in a different camp. And that's because there are historical reasons why that has happened. Same for this. So spiritualism, tarot was not really around in the US when spiritualism had its heyday, but there was cartomancy. And cartomancy, though, was kind of seen as a bit of a lowbrow thing. Like, that was more of a working class modality, whereas spiritualism was definitely an upper middle class, very, very white experience. And so maybe from there was no attempt to even try to use cartomancy for mediumship, just because that's what the unwashed masses do. That's not, we're above that. We're better than that. It could have been part of it, or they just weren't trained in its use. So, just because the one school of thought, which is the spiritualist school, and I'm not knocking them at all, like, I think they do really good work, and but it has kind of colored how we talk about what mediumship is and who's capable of it and how to use it. So in spiritualism, they don't use any cartomancy, anything like that, like I said. And so, but they do other things. Like, it was in 1886, I believe, um, that the spiritualist church definitely was like, yeah, you can use spirit boards. They weren't known as Ouija yet. You can use spirit boards that will facilitate communication. So my mind is, if we can use spirit boards and have the medium or the practitioner have their hand be influenced by someone who's crossed over, why would it then be such a leap for that to be tarot versus a spirit board? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. Of course it would matter. Of course it would be kind of the same thing. So that's one point. Another point is a lot of mediums who say to not use tarot, or that tarot isn't as good. I'm going to be really, really frank. And spoil trigger alert. I may ruffle a few feathers when I say this, but I have noticed that people that often make these claims have maybe a high beginner, low intermediate grasp of tarot. And so they're basing their opinion on their own like skill level with tarot. So that's like saying someone who's an artist, but all they've ever, done is watercolor, and just say watercolor is as good as it gets, but have never done gouache or acrylics or oils. That there is a bit of a they're not as proficient enough to actually see what tarot can do, and therefore they base their opinion on that. The final piece is there is this marketing thing that I've seen no tools psychics use, or I'm a fifth generation psychic, like all of this stuff to really put themselves apart and be like, I'm special and you should come see me because of XYZ. But none of that is actually good proof of psychic ability. A no tool psychic and a very, very good tarot medium, the tarot medium is going to blow the no tool psychic out of the park. It has to do with skill and talent and hard work, less than it takes the actual tool or no tool. So if someone wants to build a house with their bare hands, awesome, good for you. But the person who uses hammers and nails to build a house doesn't make the house not as good. That is not a proof of ability. Neither is the I'm from five generations of psychics. That may be true because the ability does seem to run in families, but it doesn't make yours typically better than someone who doesn't have that pedigree, as it were, and has trained really hard for it. That's like saying, well, I'm a fifth generation, opera singer. So therefore, obviously, I'm just going to be better than and someone who isn't. Like it's just a false dichotomy that's used to like put themselves above and have this kind of weird gatekeeping and make people feel bad. But it has the effect of people that actually could be really, really good at this kind of work. Um, Maybe not lean into it or feel like, oh, if I have to do it in the no tools way, maybe I'm not going to be good. And that's really like where my class is really situated. Like, no, you're probably more of a medium than you know, and I'm going to give you a different set of rules that could be very, very helpful for you. So for today, I wanted to talk a little bit about like what are all the ways that people can or have become mediums in the past, and I feel that it is a large list. That there's often, that natural ability that some people are just born with it. I would say that that is the most common denominator, and I think if you talk to most people, they're going to talk about how they did see things as a child, or they had literally one experience after grandma passed over that they can completely verify as a visit, or dreams that they can verify as a visit. I think it's more natural to more people than is commonly recognized, though I do believe that it's trained out of us. So as children, we're more open to those visits and we're open to those frequencies. But then as we go into regular school, that aspect of perception kind of withers on the vine because we're not being given any language around it. We're not encouraged to do it, and we're not validated in it. And then we're trained all in just materialist things that mean that that natural ability kind of just goes away on its own. But I do believe that if this is you, if you were this kind of kid, then it's there, and we can get it going again. But it's kind of like art. So a lot of people will say, "Well, I used to draw as a kid, and I'm a terrible artist." And then you could ask them, "Well, at what age did you kind of stop drawing?" And they'll go, "Oh, when I was 8." Yeah. So if she or he draws now, it is at the level of the 8-year-old because that's when the working of that skill had stopped. And it's the same with mediumship. So I feel like that is the most common one of most people. It's certainly true of me. I had a lot of latent ability in this as a child. And I put it away, and I think I'm gonna talk about why I put it away a little later on my list. So we have the natural ability, but there's also two other things that could kind of happen where I've seen this ability wake up more in people. And one of them is intense spirit activity. So, someone who would have never called themselves a medium before somehow find themselves in a very active place or a very, very active home where lots of weird things are going off. That tends to awaken that perception. So, kind or scary or whatever, that intense spirit activity coming up in someone's life often can be the catalyst that can open this ability once more for them. Um, there's also spiritual awakening, and I think that's a little different because that is not just like this spiritual activity that there is an active place that then kind of catalyzes your ability, but it's this overall spiritual awakening about your relationship to the universe, your relationship to the source, and how you think it all works. So if you are part of a religion that's just telling you this is evil, this is wrong, don't do this, it's bad, of course you're not going to lean into this stuff, or you'll feel guilty if you do. So, spiritual awakening is something that happens to an individual in a philosophical or existential level that then allows them to give themselves permission to revisit mediumship as an ability. So those can happen anytime in a lifetime. Just because it didn't happen when you were a kid doesn't mean that it can't happen when you're an adult. That's just untrue, though it is typical that children do have it. Another thing, actually, another one of this too is if you have children and one of your children has a predisposition to mediumship, even if you didn't, just interacting with that kid and watching what's happening around that child will often awaken it in you, almost like this infection. Like, infection is such a bad way to say it. I don't mean it that way, but like if there's like a natural and like that's your child and you're really hooked in with the child, it really can splash back on onto you from the experiences of having a child that is naturally talented in this way. Hey, thanks, Fogo Pogo. I'm so glad that you're here. And I love talking about it because we really need to dismantle a lot of what I would say are old wives' tales around mediumship because it's more about politics, history, and marketing than anything else than the actual thing. So if you have a kid, if you're like, well, I'm not, but I have this one child that always seems to be kind of talking to other things that I don't like, it's very common that then it can also kind of activate something within you. And I've seen that as well. Let's see here. There is, the genetic piece, which, some of these people are like, I'm a 10th generation psychic, whatever, whatever. Like that it does tend to run in families. But is it nature versus nurture? I think that's a question for the ages. Is it just genetic? Is it just something that's being passed down? Or are these people just being born in a family culture that doesn't try to shut it down? I think that would be an interesting little research project. I would like maybe to do for another day. So I think that's also very interesting. What's some other ones? Trauma, and that's where my story comes in. Having a traumatic experience can often open this up in the way that many traumatic experiences do. When you talk to a lot of psychics from a lot of different wheelhouses, it's very common, or even shamanic, it's very common to have a very traumatic experience that then kind of opened the door to this ability, whether that's, people that have had like an NDE in their death experience, they may come back with kind of some skill sets they didn't at the start of that. Channeling experiences, fearful experiences. So people that have been kidnapped, there's all those stories where they don't know. And then all of a sudden a voice arises that's like, get the up now, get up and go. Like, and then from there on, they have this special like connection with angels. So these trauma experiences can also open up this ability because it's necessary to do so. But on the other hand, trauma can shut down the ability. And that was true for me. So I always had mediumship as part of my wheelhouse. Um, and it was tarot that I came to later. And I was already wildly, precociously intuitive before I came to tarot. And I had to actually work really hard to make that intuition and tarot work together like it does today. And the good analogy is like, say you're a wild artistic talent, right? Like you're so good, but then you decide to go to art school, and then art school's like, this is how to do this, and you have to kind of relearn it. That was a little bit of my experience. So I had all of this going on very, very intensely up until about the age of 20. What was I, 20, 20, 21? I had some intense experiences where I did use tarot and mediumship at the age of 18 and 19. But it took the trigger warning here, guys. It took the loss of my stepfather at the time. He committed suicide, and he was a very troubled and awful man. And it was within 6 weeks of his passing, I had him come to me in a vision, a dream, not a dream. And in that dream, he was unlike anything I'd ever seen in life. He was full of joy and light and happiness. And in that dream, he was like, Jenna, I'm better now, is exactly what he said to me. I'm better now. And he wanted to take me somewhere, wanted to show me something, but I was terrified of him. He was awful, very abusive man. Even in the dream, I was like, I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm terrified of you. And it was really after that that I shut this down for a really, really long time. And that was the trauma of that piece. Like, I don't want to have to interact with things that harmed me because of this. But funnily enough, over the many decades since that time, I've had at least 7 different mediums in different ways say things like, who's the guy with the gun behind you? To the point where I'm like, I know. Can anyone else come through? Like, I get it. We're good. I get it. Can anyone else come through? Stop bogarting me on the line, okay? But it was really that shut down my abilities or even desire to lean into this line of work for a really long time. And it took a lot. It took a healing journey for me in terms of healing my childhood traumas and healing my CPTSD and how I in my trauma responses and all that fun stuff, to then decide, I think I really want to do this again. I want to try. And that was a few years ago. So I took what I had remembered of mediumship and I developed my own protocol, as it were, to knit tarot and mediumship together in a very specific way that is nothing like what the spiritualism school is, which is where most mediums at some point in their genealogy get the training. So it's very unique. And I started offering it as a session for my clients. And I just keep getting stronger and stronger and better and better. And that's where the other 2 parts of what makes a medium come to life, which is training and experience. And that even if you have never had any of these other abilities, but you connect with tarot, um, through training and experience, we can get you somewhere that maybe you didn't even know you could get to before it. So that's the other piece, that I don't think that this is some kind of weird birthright that other people are locked out of. I really don't believe that. I do believe that some people are more naturally talented than others, just like someone is naturally has a more beautiful voice, just they were born with this beautiful voice. But that doesn't mean someone with a less beautiful voice, if they're not training their butts off and working at it, can't also get there too. I think both of these things can happen. So I really want to take this idea of this gatekeeping that tends to be surrounded in mediumship and kind of get rid of it, because I can say personally that um, since I have come back into doing this work as part of my healing journey, it has brought me a tremendous amount of peace in my life, because as I'm bringing people through over and over and over again, I am just getting such similar messages that really make me feel very comfortable about death for myself. And like, I don't fear it at all. I mean, I don't want to be in pain. That sucks. But I really don't. Like, it's really shifted my relationship to death and my relationship to what it means to have an afterlife. Um, and it's funny, and I say that in quotes because from what I see, and I try really hard not to speculate or add more than I'm perceiving consistently. I just don't. I want to be really, really careful. Um, but this idea of afterlife, I think a better way of wording that from what I see is that our living lives, if you are alive in a physical body right now, you are actually in the pre-life. And that's the life. This is the pre-life or the dream life. That this is not the actual. This is the dream or the pre-game of what really actually happens once you cross over. And that really has given me such tremendous, tremendous peace. And another part, because I don't go looking for trouble. I mean, I could talk about house clearings and all of that, but when I'm in sessions with others in this format, it's always someone that that person has loved. And so it becomes really clear to me, really clear, honestly, that and here's the thing, I'm naturally a glass half empty kind of girl. Like, I'm a natural pessimist, skeptic, believe it or not. Um, but it is so clear to me that all of this, all of this is run on love. Love is literally the power. It's running the universe, the whole thing. And that is a big love and also a little love. And each of those loves, like, there, you can't quantify it. It is the net, it is the fabric with which all of this seems to run, kind of like gravity. And that love is indestructible, truly indestructible. Because each time I bring someone through, it's the connection, and it's the connection built on this wavelength of love in a way that's given me such great peace in my own life as I think about and ponder the big questions. What does all this mean? So, yeah, I think that's a lot of it. Because of the work I do and the way that I do, one of the things I don't agree with is some mediums just kind of like being at the grocery store, the deli, and it's like, "Oh, your dad is here." I really don't like that, because it fosters a sense of how mediums work that I don't think is necessarily true, or that mediums should work, because we need to have good boundaries and also consent. I don't want somebody coming in talking at me or like, "I'm trying to take a shower, bro." Like, "You see I'm busy? Like, I'm off the clock." And so I have built a very particular and very, what's the word I'm thinking of? Intentional space for these meetings to occur, so that if we're not in that space, it rarely does occur. Like, I'm not, sometimes I'll get things for sure, but typically I'm shutting it down. And that really is the mark of a good medium, is to have good boundaries around that. But the difference in tarot readings. So like tarot readings being, uh, because I do that professionally, right? So what what do most people come to tarot readings for? It's often to alleviate a concern, anxiety, a worry. They want clarity, they want hope, but there's often anxiety or fear as the undercurrent. So to read tarot in that way often requires a very, very high EQ, a very high emotional intelligence factor, because you're also having to navigate and hold space for the reactions people will have naturally, or the defenses people will have, or all the things that can come up in a tarot reading. That doesn't actually happen in a mediumship reading. In some ways, mediumship is easier because it's typically someone wanting to connect to someone they love. And they want to know, like, are they okay? Do they know I loved them? Do they know I was there? And to be able to be the interpreter for that, the messenger for that, is just so affirming and loving and sweet. But it can be a bit of a heavier lift, because you're not able to control the experience as much as you would, say, a more like normie tarot reading, because I don't always know what they wanna talk about when they show up. And it may not even be like what the client wants. Like, maybe the client's like, "I wanna know where the buried treasure is that you buried." And great granddad is like, "I don't care about that. I'm not gonna tell you. I don't care. I have no interest in telling you that, talking about that." And so there's a little bit of less, like we can ask the question, but the way they want to respond or talk may be completely different, which we have to be open to. So that's always very interesting. And I let people know, like, I don't know how they're going to show up, and the way they show up is different. Sometimes it's a lot of validation, sometimes it's a lot of advice, sometimes it's a lot of wanting to uh, like express regret for things that had happened in life, or they see that the person who's living is still in pain, and they want to witness that, they want to call to that. And sometimes it's hard to get someone at all. Like, it really just depends on them and the nature of how they communicate when they come through is different as well, which is a whole other YouTube or class for another time. But if this is like, if you feel like validated, if things I'm saying and you're just like, yeah, that tracks, that tracks, that tracks, but I didn't know I could be a medium, you could totally be a medium. If you're like, well, I wanted to be a medium, but I was told I couldn't use tarot or do these other things, yeah, throw that out. You can. Um, And if this makes you curious to want to know more, I mean, I have my class, and that's down here. We start August 1st, and it is going to be a hybrid course. So it'll be part like video you get ahead of the learning module, and then we meet a week later on Zoom live so that we can actually practice in real time with and for each other to really get you kind of comfortable with the concepts and also the practice. Also, what was I going to say? Mm, 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 mm. Oh, yes. There is an early bird special through July 1st, so you've got a few more weeks if that seems of interest. But that's basically my talk for today. And so, any of you that are live, and I see there's a good number of you live, are there anything else that you've heard around mediumship? Are there any like old wives' tales or things that someone told you that made you believe a certain way? I'd love to hear it. If there's any more than, I'd love to collect them so then I can really research them and go, is this actually true? Or is this something that we've just been telling each other is true until we believed it? Um, and if you have any questions about tarot mediumship, please go ahead and answer. So that's it for my talk. And it's funny because with the trauma in my stepfather, now that I'm doing this work so much, he doesn't come and bug me too much. But oh, you know what? I think we can also talk about um can pet mediumship work? Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. You're and it's very common, I've noticed that, if someone comes through, that their favorite pet will also come back through with them, like, like, if that pet had crossed over, it's really common. I'm like, "I see this black dog with your grandfather. Oh my god, that was so and so. Okay, well, they're both showing up to say that they're together, don't worry, it's fine." That comes through a lot. Um the other thing too I could also share is that it seems like no one ever crosses over completely alone. There's always someone there to grab them, to grab them in love, and it is typically someone they loved in life. Um, and I kinda see it like every time we're born, right? We're born into this world, someone catches us on this end, someone's catching us on the other end too, that we're caught on each side of this interdimensional transportation that we're doing through our lifetimes. So worry about, do they know that I meant to be there? Or did they know that I was there, or they were alone when they crossed over. They weren't alone when they crossed over. And it's typical, and you can ask any hospice nurse this, it's typical that people will wait until their family leaves before they cross over, because the act of the physical family and the physical world, it's like it makes it harder for them just to go to the other family that's also waiting for them. So if that's ever been something you have felt guilty about, or like worried about, or you yourself, like, am I going to die alone, just alone in a hospital bed? You're not, because you're not going to be alone. There's going to be someone there from the other side to catch you. That comes through so consistently. I'm just like not even worried about that, for myself or anyone. Um, the other thing too, what else do I want to say about that? Occasionally in readings, with tarot mediumship, occasionally, like I would say like 1 out of 50 that I've encountered, that there's also people who show up who are to be born into the family. I don't really get, like, I'm not gonna tell you like what like that I have this like theory, grand unified theory about that. Like, oh, it's from, like it's your mother coming back as your kid. Like, I don't know that. Like, I don't see that, but I see it's like, oh, this little spark is known to us and we're guiding them. They want to come down through you, and we already have met them. They're great. We cannot wait to have this one get on that ride through the family line. I've seen that a few times. And sometimes in really weird ways where it was quite unexpected. Um, and sometimes, like, oh gosh, I have so many stories, but I need to wait for my class. I'm gonna give them all away. Oh, but that's all the stuff that I have noticed. Sometimes I've noticed, like, it's for me personally, and I know other people have different rules around this. For me personally, I do not call someone in if they've crossed within 6 months. And the reason for that is it's hard. I've just noticed, like, there's a sense of almost like they're really, really busy, um, and they're not ready to come back. Uh, Almost as if like in some kind of like rehab or something. Like there's some place they're at on the other side where they're having to just reacclimate or something. I don't have the word for it. And it feels like it happens within usually that first year, but the first 6 months, it's really hard to grab them. It's the feeling is very, the link is weaker, and they're not ready to like talk yet, is kind of the feeling I get. Like that's harder. Um, yeah, Nicole, that's a great way of putting it, like reintegration. Yeah. Maybe like someone was at war and then they have to come back and get reintegrated to like this way of living. And the other thing I've noticed, if I've called someone like over successive years. Like I don't like calling too often because not because of them, but because of the grieving person on this side. Like they have to move through that grief. So if it's in a way that's keeping that from happening, that can be harmful. Um, but I'll notice over time that their awareness of what happened in life and their awareness around their part in it and what they were responsible for gets clearer and clearer the further out we go. Yes, Nicole, PTSD from this life exists. Yeah, kind of. But also like really getting clear on this is this is like what happened. This is why it happened. These were the choices. Which brings me to maybe two other points I want to make. And so I see your question, Fogo. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I wanted to make this. So when my stepfather came back and he was just full of light and joy, it was unlike I've ever seen this man ever. Like I was terrified of him. He was awful. He was awful. Um, and when he showed up, it was this brightness. And I noticed that as well. Like, so sometimes people will come through and I'm like, oh, this person is coming off like this. And then the client's going, that doesn't sound like him at all. He was a jerk or whatever. And then I have to be like, I need more validation in another way because they're not recognizing you. And that happens. But what I've come to understand is that reintegration PTSD thing is also about healing them. And I get this pervasive feeling that we're not punished. We're not punished for what happened in life. We're healed. And that a lot of the issues of that individual was of the body, of the biological body, like addictions or say a mental health issue, that this was in the physical structures. And once they're free of that, they're healed of that, like, or in this integration thing, they're healed. I don't quite know. Again, I don't want to over speculate from what I sense, but I get that a lot. And so sometimes the people coming through are people we may not have recognized because they were so suffering in life or beleaguered by whatever these demons were that were of the body. So that's something that is I tend to see a lot. Um, so to your question, let me put this up. Let me show it. How did you work through the doubt? Like what did you hear, see, feel, especially if you know the person you are reading for? I think it's good to do readings for people you don't know well so that your own subjective like knowledge is not kind of getting in the way, at least in the beginning. And you work through doubt by just doing it and getting verification. So the more I say to someone, I'm getting this, is this true, not true? And then they verify that over many times starts to train myself to go, I recognize what this feels like when it shows up. But also, we have to be okay with being wrong. We can absolutely be wrong. Like that happens. We're human. Or we may be misunderstanding what's coming through. I mean, I've been wrong when I've done this, probably because someone else came through than the person we were looking for. That's actually quite rare, but that does happen. Or maybe I'm having an off day. That happens. But typically, when I can validate, it helps build my confidence. And you need to have a lot of it because like I've had so many experiences like this. This is an example I use a lot. So I had someone come through and I kept getting this feeling of um, fear of mice, like fear of mice. And I said to this person, did your grandparent have a rodent phobia? I remember using that term. And they go, no, I don't. I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, okay. But sometimes they'll keep bugging me with it. Like it keeps coming back like, no, this is true. This is true. Just say it. And I said, I know that I know you said no, right? I know you said no, but are you sure they weren't afraid of mice? Oh my God, they were terrified of mice. So it was accurate. But for whatever reason, the wording I used didn't click with the person listening. So sometimes that happens. And then sometimes the the person won't know. They won't know. I had this happen recently. Like, someone, I was like, I see like, a stuffed animal, like almost like a Raggedy Ann or Andy, like a more flat stuffed animal or Raggedy Ann or Andy being given to you. Do you have anything like this? And they were like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea. That's probably not, I don't know." And then I saw that person a week later and was like, "You know what, Jenna? My parents found this bin that I forgot that I even had that was up in the attic that was full of stuffed animals, including ones that she gave me." So it can be stuff like that. So for me, when I'm reading, and if someone's going, "No," or like, "That doesn't click," that's okay. I don't sit with it, and I don't ask them to. I'm like, "Okay, just put it away and let's keep going." I don't wanna get stuck with it because then that takes me out of the flow space, and it's often that information, however wacky or weird, will come back. I've had some really, really interesting ones come back and be verified. So is that helpful? I hope it is. I hope it's helpful. Yeah, you're right. Some you do get trauma. Um, and sometimes the trauma is just to heal the trauma that you're on your own healing journey, and then it will come back online on its own without you having to really like target it, because I wasn't targeting it. It was a natural side effect of not being suppressed because the trauma was healing. So I always am like, if you had it and then you lost it, look to trauma, look to training, look to something that told you you couldn't or you were afraid to, and let's see what happens. So, kind of to the point that you're talking about with like how do we be confident? I've had some really interesting stuff come through, and this one I actually saw this client recently. I was like, "Can I talk about this story because it's so cool?" She's like, "Yeah, of course." So so just to give you a sense, so with tarot mediumship, well, part of what we're doing is we're allowing the images of the cards to spark the messages to come through. And so in this instance, I had this stepfather come through, and I kept seeing, like, I kept looking at dirt and like male hands digging in the dirt. And I was like, was he a gardener? Did he like to garden? She's like, "No, I don't know. We don't know." And so, as usual, speculation gets in the way. And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know." But it was such an intense, like, he didn't want to get away from it. And that tells me that there's something really big there. And then there was something with fire around it. And I couldn't quite figure it out. And so, probably saw this client a few months later, and she was like, "Jenna, oh my God, I figured it out." And I was like, "What was it?" And she's like, "So I found out from my mother, I didn't know this, that he was a POW and that they made them dig in the ground for landmines." And that's what that was. Crazy, right? I didn't see the mine. I just saw his hands digging at something and then this feeling of fire and heat. So that's the thing about mediumship and tarot mediumship that can be very different from your common tarot reading experience, because a common tarot reading experience is about always trying to get to clarity, right? Where we're really not having any questions by the end of it. It all feels like it kind of clicks. And sometimes we don't always, and then that's kind of frustrating. But most of us are getting to clarity. With tarot mediumship, it's a whole other ball game, a whole other set of rules where the clarity may not come immediately, and it's a bigger lift. It's just a bigger thing that you're going to have to really trust what you're seeing and just get it out in a way you don't necessarily have to with like a common tarot reading. And that goes back to that confidence piece that you were talking about. um And I think like confidence, right? And the funny thing is I've been doing tarot mediumship full time with my clients for about 3 years now. And every single time I go into it, I'm like, is it going to work this time? I really do. I'm like, maybe it won't work this time. That still goes off in my head. Like, maybe it won't work this time. Maybe you'll fail. And I'm just like, oh God, this is so stressful. And then it works. Um, so we can try to get ourselves out of the way as the speaker, as the spectral reader. We want to get ourselves out of the way of that process. And the more we can try to get out of our way, the better, which means if we do feel nervous or uncertain or scared, that we find a way to kind of compartmentalize that and shelve it and stay in the flow of like really getting messages across, even when you don't understand them, because there's a plenty that I have gotten that I did not understand. And I've had tons of validation. And sometimes the craziest, weirdest ones are the ones that get validated. Like I had someone come in who lost a good friend, and I got this just image of this person like shrugging on like a jacket, or like like a jacket or something. And I was like, he keeps doing this over and over and over again. I have no idea what the heck that's about necessarily. And the validation was this: we were in karate together, and I have his, I don't know what to call it, that white like karate uniform. I don't know the name of it. But he had his, and he had framed it and put it in on the wall of his home, like stuff like that. Um, so for me, because I do hear things occasionally, but it's usually like one-liners. It's mostly visual, and that's probably because I have so focused a lot on the tarot aspect, but sometimes I get smell. Rarely, very rarely, but sometimes I do. So, yeah, I think that's kind of all I want to talk about today. But I hope that this has been helpful for you in some way, or this excites you, or maybe you want to give this a try. Again, August 1st is when we're launching this boat into the water, and I'm really excited. This is the first one I've done where I did one which was like 2 hours, like a 2 hour workshop about 2 years ago, and it was obvious that what the heck was I thinking? Just 2 hours, like so it's taking me this long because of course, I had a book to write, like this guy right here. Will you give me a reading? That kind of happened. And I had to like market it, blah, blah. And so I have finally had the time to really sit down and put this together. And it's hard because it's having to come up with some comprehensive syllabus off of things I've kind of just figured out on my own and like scrapped together. And I'm like, now I've got to actually put it into like some kind of order that other people are going to understand. And that's harder than one would think. At least it is for me. So this is four live workshops and four pre-lessons, but I never just keep it at an hour. We're probably looking at about probably at least 20 hours of content overall, with a lot of hands-on practice if you'd like. And I'm also, if you want to find yourself in Atlanta, Georgia at the end of July, I am presenting at the Mystic South conference, and that I will be doing a 90, oh my God, a 90-minute version somehow of all of this. So yeah, I hope you guys come along with the ride. If anyone has any last questions, I am happy. Go ahead and type them in I don't know which side it is, into the comments. But other than that, that was pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. I really hope that more people come into this without all of the gatekeeping that seems to occur within the psychic and new age communities that keep people from having what I would call just incredibly loving, incredibly healing, incredibly kind experiences. Like, it's a joy to do this. It's absolutely a joy to do this. It is an honor. It is an honor to do this and to be in this work. Whether you want to do that for clients or people you know, or even just spirits of place. It's an honor. And I'm so happy that I came back to this for sure. So, in the class, we're going to be going through a lot of techniques I've developed and also like tarot approaches, Lenormand approaches, and even some charm casting approaches. All things I've kind of developed along the way, I wanted to share. So, it's going to be a lot of different little things. And I'm really excited about it. Between now and August 1st, I'll probably be on here a little more often, like talking to different about different aspects of this, just to, talk you into it, of course. That's what I'm here to do. Get you excited for it. And just have a fun and amazing and deep time with people that love this or want to love this as much as I've come to love it without all of the gatekeeping. We can let go of that. So that's it, my friends. That is my talk for tonight. I don't think there are any other questions, but I'm so glad that you came. And I'm glad for those that are going to be listening later. And again, JennaMatlin.com, Spectral Reader. I hope to see you there. This is going to be good stuff. So have a wonderful rest of your day/evening. Bye, guys.